Hello, and welcome back to Science with Mr. Morgan. In today's episode, we are going to continue our conversation about reproductive behaviors and population growth. In part 1, we talked about reproductive behaviors in animals as well as populations and various revolutions in the history of humans. And remember, I'm not talking about revolutions like the Revolutionary War. Circling back to populations though, let's talk about overpopulation and overconsumption. By definition, overpopulation is when the population of an area exceeds the carrying capacity of the region itself. Now at this point in time, humans have seemingly increased the carrying capacity of the planet for humans, but the question remains, is it enough? Did we increase it enough? Scientific evidence suggests that the human population may be too high and exceeding the carrying capacity of the planet, and some evidence of this includes the following. Providing energy for the large population creates a lot of pollution. And one way it does this is through burning fossil fuels, which also increases global warming. These fossil fuel supplies are dwindling and are anticipated to run out by the mid-2000s, which is not that far in the future from now. To keep up with the larger population sizes, we've also killed too many animals for food, which has led to some of the best fishing grounds in the oceans having almost no fish left in them. In our expansion, humans have destroyed many habitats, which in turn has caused the extinction of other animals. And along with our expansion, humans have also spread invasive species. What is an invasive species? These are species that are originally from a different area and get introduced to a new area, but then outcompete the native species. Anyways, back to overconsumption, this is when a resource usage is unattainable in the long term. This can be done by obtaining or using many more products than people need. Now that we spent time talking about population, let's get back to our conversation on reproductive behaviors. But this time, instead of animals, we're going to specifically talk about plants. And I know I said we're going to get back to it, but before we talk about plant reproductive behaviors, let's talk about plant types. The first type of plants that we're going to talk about are non-vascular plants. These do not have vascular structure in them, which also means that they don't grow very tall. Examples of non-vascular plants include things like mosses, liverworts, hornworts. The next type of plants are seedless vascular plants. These plants have evolved to have vascular tissue, but they still do not have seeds, hence seedless being in the name. Because of the vascular tissue, these grow taller than non-vascular plants. And examples of seedless vascular plants include things like ferns, whisk ferns, club mosses, and horsetails. The next type of plant we're going to talk about are gymnosperms. Gymnosperms have seeds, but they do not have flowers. And in Greek, gymno means naked, so their seeds are not protected by flowers, they're essentially naked. Examples of gymnosperms include things like redwoods, fir, and cypress trees. And the last type of plant that we're going to talk about today are angiosperms. Angiosperms are flowering plants, and these plants have vascular tissue, seeds, and flowers. Examples of angiosperms include magnolia trees, roses, tulips, and tomatoes. So now that we've covered plant types, let's cover plant reproductive behaviors. Non-vascular and seedless vascular plants can both reproduce sexually or asexually. If they reproduce asexually, it is likely via fragmentation. And remember that fragmentation is where an organism grows out of a fragment or a piece of the original organism. If they reproduce sexually, it is through spores that are spread via winds and other methods like being attached to an animal. In order for this to happen though, the plant must be in an environment that would aid in the spreading of spores. Now remember how we talked about the alternation of generations in the reproduction episode way back when? Well, non-vascular seedless plants spend most of their life in the gametophyte stage, aka the haploid stage, where they have half of the number of chromosomes. Seedless vascular plants spend most of their time in the sporophyte stage, aka the diploid stage. Both non-vascular seedless plants and seedless vascular plants have a specialized structure which is an important part of reproduction, and this is known as the sporangium, which produces spores. Anyway, plants that have seeds are up next. Seeds themselves are a plant ovule, and these contain an embryo. The ovule is part of the plant's ovary. Seeds allow a plant embryo to survive droughts, harsh winters, and other conditions that would kill an adult plant. The seed also stores food for the young plant after it sprouts, which greatly increases the chance that that tiny plant will survive. Both gymnosperms and angiosperms use seeds to spread around their offspring, and this can be done in a variety of ways. One way that some seeds spread is via the wind. These can be carried long distances by the wind depending on the wind strength. A common example that you've probably seen is the dandelion fluff when they're white. These can travel long distances on the wind, which increases the chances that dandelions will grow somewhere that they weren't before. Another way that some seeds spread is via fleshy fruit. Some flowering plants grow fleshy fruit, which helps to disperse the seeds via the animals that eat them. Now, animals eat the fruit and the seeds, and then these animals travel to a different location. Once the seeds pass through the digestive tract, the animals defecate and leave the seed behind to grow. Some examples of fruits that this happens with include things like apples, oranges, berries, citrus fruit, and cherries. These examples are for plants that produce fleshy fruits. Some non-fleshy fruits have been specially adapted for animals to carry them on their fur, and you're probably familiar with one such example, the burdock. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. Until next time.